It brings me no joy to tell you all this, and it is just my impression, so take it for whatever you think it's worth. I think that Nick Fuentes is someone who's not to be trusted. Now, my take on Nick is not, I think, what you will hear typically from people who aren't into him. I'm not gonna. I don't care about whether he's actually gay or not. I don't care about his racial composition. Um, those things don't interest me at all. My assessment of Nick has been in three phases. When I first became aware of him, like maybe a few years ago, and it was like this kid, this boyish sort of character, this little guy who just doesn't look like who looks completely unthreatening, and and yet he's being banned from. He can't fly on planes. He's being banned from all social media. He's being treated like a pariah. And yeah, of course, that made me sort of sympathize with him. And I also sort of thought, well, what the hell is the big deal about this guy? Because people talked about him like he was a menace, or they talked about him like he was the next big thing. And I sort of thought, that the few times I saw him, the times that I'd heard him talk, he seemed, what's the word? For some reason, the words always escape you when you want them. But all I can think of is harmless. He seemed harmless. He seemed, this is a metaphor that I've used, or not really a metaphor, just a comparison that I used to talk about my impression of Nick Fuentes. Was he barely looked like he was out of high school. Like he looked like he could still have been in high school. Even today at age 27, I think he could possibly pass for a high school senior. He's a boyish looking fellow. He's slight. He's got kind of a higher register of voice. So my thoughts were at the time, okay, this seems like, because I taught a couple of years of high school and it was miserable. I taught a few more years of college level, which was quite a bit more tolerable, but still not perfect. But what job is perfect, really? And but he seemed like somebody who I could see being a teacher of an advanced placement class, and I could see him being like teaching AP English, let's say, and I could see him being somebody, a kid who really really showed off a lot, who would show up every day, you always be on time, always do the work, and would also just want to have things to say, would always participate in a class discussion, and who would sometimes say provocative things, of course, and just enjoy the attention that it brought him. I've known some kids like that, precocious high school kids, who are looking forward to going to college, have probably filled out all of their college resumes and are aiming for an Ivy League. that's what he that seeing him, the essence of Nick Fuentes. That's what he reminded me of. He didn't seem like a racist, sexist, homophobic menace to society. He didn't seem like a Jew hater. He didn't seem like the new Hitler. None of those things, none of those assessments of him made any sense to me at all. Now, more recently, in the last year or so, I've paid more attention to him. I've watched some of his interviews, and then I've gone and watched some segments on his show. And mea culpa, in many ways, I underestimated this guy. He looks boyish, he sounds boyish, he seems totally unthreatening, just in the way he comes across. And I'm not saying he actually is threatening, but I'm just describing him. But he is somebody who has a sense of humor and can be self-deprecating and can come across as very likable, very relatable, very unpretentious. He'll talk about anything. He'll talk about how he loves McDonald's food and pizza. He's not a mahog kind of guy, and he's got this kind of likable, friendly, approachable demeanor to him. But he's also a wise ass, and he revels in being a wise ass. And he can be very funny. He is a funny guy, but he's also very good at what he does. He's very very intelligent, very erudite, very knowledgeable, and he can break things down. He can take an issue, talk about what's going on, and without stuttering or stammering or doing any, like me, without a bunch of unnecessary pauses and saying and a lot. He can just talk off the top of his head in a way that is extremely engaging for hours on end, and say very intelligent things, and I thought, well, okay, well, this is a kid I've been underestimating, Nick. So he's got something to offer here. And then I started. So that was the second phase of my Nick Fuentes awareness. I went from not taking him that seriously, not understanding why anyone took him seriously, to seeing that he was, a force to be reckoned with. He was intellectual. He was engaging. He was charming. Even in his some of his idiosyncratic takes on things, like him, being this devout Catholic, but someone who cusses a lot and really doesn't seem to be a big fan of women or of marriage. I sort of, even with those idiosyncrasies, those actually made him more interesting to me. And it didn't make me think necessarily that he's gay. I mean, I don't like that. You can be just somebody who doesn't foresee marriage for himself, and who doesn't really, enjoy the company of women that much, because he makes points that I think are controversial, but I think deserve some credence about how women, especially younger women, often behave today. That is not very appealing. But that's just because I'm a fellow misogynist. You could just call me that, and dismiss me out of hand. I suppose, and some of you will. And, but when I started to pay a bit more attention to him, I saw that there's something slippery about Nick. I think um, what I'm afraid of is I don't know how much conviction, I don't know how much substance there is as far as what he really stands for. He seems like somebody who who could double talk. I've heard him double talk. I've heard him go back I've heard him. Uh, he seems to be someone who calibrates his message depending on what he thinks is useful to say for the period of time in which he's talking. So, he'll spend most of his time, uh, just unashamedly saying nigga, and just being completely anti woke and all of that. And then when Dasha Nekrasova got canceled, he responded to that by saying, "Look, the Republicans are in charge now, and now it's okay to be cruel to blacks and to gays, but there's still a group that we can't insult." And so it's like he's saying, he put it in such a way that made it seem like he was suddenly not on board with being anti-woke when it came to saying things, just kissing the asses of protected groups, like blacks or gays or women or transsexuals or whatever. Uh, like he was like he was calibrating his message to try to reach. I thought to try to reach leftists, uh, who who were maybe resonating with his message about America first, or about maybe the leftists wouldn't say America first, but they would say we're tired of being allied with Israel when Israel is engaged in this destructive, some say genocidal assault on Gaza right now, and why are they getting billions of dollars in aid from the United States, and his whole tendency to attack mainstream, I mean, just to attack conservatism, to attack to turn on Trump, who I don't. Let me make this clear. I'm not saying be loyal to Trump. I'm not. That's not my shtick. I'm not loyal to any politician. But he just spends so much time calibrating his message and saying things that I think are designed to I get the impression that he part of his genius is seeing what his audience, what some parts of his audience or some parts of his potential audience would like to hear, and then telling them those things. And he's aware that people, it's not just young white right-wing men who are listening to him. He's aware that he's getting some attention from some other quarters, and he'll like and well, he plays both sides of a story. or he'll go from one set of talking points to a seemingly opposite set of talking points, just because it's convenient for him, or he sees the advantage of doing so. I remember him at first saying, oh, you people who are trying to blame Charlie Kirk's assassination on Israel are all ridiculous. There's no evidence for it. And, Israel's bad, but there's no evidence that they killed Charlie Kirk. That's what he says one time. And then he's shit talking once it becomes sort of a thing amongst more conspiracy-minded people on the right to really, I did this prior video where I was talking with Annalise about it was, the title of the video was the Erica Kirk Hate Brigade, and I remembered seeing how people were turning on Erica Kirk. And this is a controversial statement. I'm taking a controversial position here because I'm not. I haven't seen. I don't suspect Erica Kirk of any wrongdoing. I don't see her as somebody who's a bad actor, as they say. And I don't get any impression at all that she is cashing in on her husband's death, or that she's, my impression of Erica Kirk has been a positive one. I understand why people react the way that they do to her presentation style sometimes, but I think I don't buy into this whole oh, she's the happiest widow we've ever seen, that whole trope that's been going around. And just because she's appearing on things, just because you can go back and watch my video with Annalise where we talk about this if you want to hear more. But what I remember Nick doing was, like, on the one hand, he says on one of his shows, he says the people who are trying to blame Israel, that's silly, let's not go there, that's none of the facts are suggesting that that's true. None of the discernible facts that we can see are suggesting that Israel, that Charlie Kirk was a Mossad hit. But then he goes back and says, look, when Erica Kirk spoke, and when she forgave the assassin of her husband, that was probably something that her speechwriter and her decided what would get the maximum effect, and so it's talking very, very cynically about the moment where she forgave the killer of her husband, which I thought was out of line. I was bothered by that. I was a little offended by that. But I think what bothered me more than the fact that I disagreed with what he was saying was just that I saw him again. I see him doing this thing where he calibrates his message, where he's aware of his audience and focuses on certain things at certain times in order to get certain people on board with him. And what I am seeing shades of here, what I'm seeing shades of with Nick Fuentes, is Richard Spencer 2.0. What a dud Richard Spencer turned out to be, huh? I mean, at least I think so. And I used to do podcasts with him. I used to hang out with him online, and was I guess sort of acquaintances, maybe even friends with him for a time, but that was a while ago. But Richard became this figure that represented what was then called the alt-right. And he he showed these tendencies to want to calibrate his message. I saw eventually an aspect of him that where he was more and more just going this route of being somebody on the right who hated everybody on the right, who hated red state America, who would make fun of all of the institutions that red-blooded American men would be into, like college football and what have you, and he was sort of this he was this snob who seemed to covet liberals and seemed to want to almost style himself as a liberal, just because he had this kind of clear spite against the against red state America, against the typical Republican voter out there. And he supported Trump for a time when he thought Trump was going to represent something different in American politics. But then after Trump, he saw that Trump was just being embraced by the red state Americans that he hated. Then he turned against Trump. And with Richard, I don't think he calibrated his take on things to try to win people over. I think it was more just because if anything, he was tin-eared. He was in some ways the opposite of Nick, I guess. He would he refused to signal that he was on board with red state America and what the values of the typical church-going American conservative. He wanted to be an edgy pagan Nietzschean atheist, who really thought that liberals were more intelligent and had it together more than conservatives were just a bunch of rubes and what have you. And so eventually he just turned against everything he was still supposed to represent the alt-right or the dissident right, but I don't know he changed his like he was pro-Russia, and then he became like some big war hawk for Ukraine, and he was pro-lockdown, and there were all kinds of positions that he took that I just thought, what the hell is he trying? I think he was maybe making. I think he was motivated by spite, but I think in a way he was trying to win over the liberals, to get the liberals to see that he was one of them, and that never worked. They still hate him, of course. They still look down on him. For some reason, some people in the dissident right still like him. I have no idea why. I shouldn't say like him, because I'm not talking about him personally, but who still think that he's got something valuable to offer. Whereas to me, it seems like he's just, for the last 7 years, has been wrong about everything, every important thing. Most importantly, wrong about the lockdown. Most importantly, wrong about the vaccine, or the Baj, as I used to call it here. The mandates and all of those totalitarian measures. He was in favor of all those things. campaigned for Biden in 2020, uh, gave his endorsement to Kamala Harris in 2024, which failed to move the needle. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, for a while, Richard Spencer was the guy who the media saw as the leader of the alt-right or the dissident right. And he made this whole series of blunders, tactical mistakes, or whatever they were, but I think they were motivated by some effort to calibrate. Again, a politician calibrates. A politician will say one thing to one crowd and say the very opposite thing to a different crowd to get them on his side. And a politician has people working for him who take note of certain phrases that work and other, all of that bullshit that's all the things that the pundits all study, the what are they called, the policy wonks or whatever, all those people that that are part of that whole wretched process of democracy, of campaigning, and of trying to win over people's votes and whatnot. And I should have begged for y'all's indulgence here because this is getting a little lengthy. But I think what I want to say is I'm seeing that even though Nick is different from Richard in many ways, he's younger, more boyish, more disarming. I thought Richard could be very likable at times. I'm remembering that, but he's not really thought of as likable now. So he didn't really succeed at coming across that way. But I think there's a disarming quality to hearing Nick speak, because he comes across as unpretentious. He'll joke around. He'll make fun of himself, and he'll talk about he can be he can really turn on the serious, I'm making serious points here, you better listen, and then you can hear, if you were speaking to a live crowd, I bet you could hear a pin drop, because he's very good at speaking in a captivating manner. Again, extemporaneously, much better than Richard ever was, and way better than I am. So don't get me wrong. I'm not claiming anything about myself. I'm not claiming that I could do a better job, but which should be obvious here from this video and from other videos that you've had the misfortune of seeing me in. But what I see in Nick is somebody who calibrates his message and who panders. He'll say, I think I already gave an example of that earlier, but he'll say something that it's like, whoa, this is Nick saying something that sounds like he's against. This is Nick who says nigga all the time, and has started that whole campaign of white ass niggas going hard as fuck. The anagram that spells out. He's been the pioneer of all of that. But then he'll turn around and say things like, under Republicans, it's okay to be cruel to blacks. Like one minute he says, blacks are more prone to criminal behavior and should be, and many of them should be in prison. But then the next minute he's saying something that sounds like he's against, like something that sounds almost liberal. It sounds like he's trying to appeal to the liberals who are like him, opposed to the Israel lobby. Or he's trying to convince them that he's one of them. And you know what really, and this has already gotten kind of lengthy, so let me close with this observation. I've seen a couple of, if you go on, watch him on Rumble. I usually don't watch like a 5-hour show of his or a 3-hour show. I don't usually watch it from beginning to end, but I see, smaller, more bite-sized snippets. And a couple of times I've watched him when he's receiving super chats. And the first time I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was completely, I was laughing. I was cracking up because he was getting super chats are when people send you money, right? I've never been able to enable super chats for myself because I'm just low. I'm just a low down, I'm just shitty. I'm lower than a snake's belly, as an older expression goes that I've remember hearing my dad use that term before. Lower than a snake's belly. That's me. I mean, I can't even enable super chats to work. If I could get super chats to work for me, and I was doing a live stream, and somebody was kicking me $5 or $10, and saying something, like, "Hey Andy, love you, love what you're doing. Keep up the good work." I would be gracious. I would say, thanks so much. And if they made a point that was maybe not the most profound point ever made, but still, still was basically true, I would find a way to talk about it that didn't insult the person who was giving me money, and in giving me money, making this statement. Or if I disagreed, I might just tell them that I disagreed and why I disagreed. And hopefully there would be a way to do that wouldn't just be boring, that wouldn't just be like, "Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you for the money. Oh, thank you for the money. Yes, right on. What you're saying is completely true. Right on." I understand the danger of that, but Nick is like, you watch him in these super chat segments. And again, the first time I saw it, it was really funny. Second time I saw it, it was still funny, but then I was thinking, what in the world is he doing here? Like, what he does is people give him like big, like $80, $150, $200, and one after the other. I mean, he's racking up the funds. And these are from, loyal listeners, people out there who mostly say nice things to him. And his response is to make fun of them. His response is to, like, if they say something that's kind of trite, he'll mock them for being trite. And then, or he'll just, if somebody starts to say something, and he finds it boring, he'll just skip it, and move on to the next one. And he's just all grumpy and grouchy and just mocking. And to the people who are sending him money and saying nice things to him and boosting him, and I would have thought, when the whole world hated you, when the whole establishment hated you, when you weren't even allowed to fly on airplanes, when you were being deplatformed everywhere, that I would have thought that getting that kind of affirmation and getting that kind of money from so many people would be really overwhelming, touching. You know, I can just imagine. I can only imagine. It's envy. It's envy on my part. I will admit it. If I were that kind of in that kind of situation, I would be I would be full on envy. I mean, I would be, or I am envious when I see him getting kicked all these super chats like $200, $250, $100, 150, $80. Generous funds where by the end of the night he's made a few grand for just from contributions from fans, and yet everything that they say, he finds something to make fun of. He seems to have this kind of contempt for his audience, which it's funny. Don't get me wrong. I see the humor in it. But to me, it suggests that he's not really serious. And I guess this is in a way contradicting what I was saying before, because what I was saying before is that he calibrates his message, that he panders, that I don't know what really lies at his core. I think when he was on Tucker's show, he was like, there were even moments where he was virtue signaling against racism, which is the last thing you would expect this guy to do. He was saying, well, we know there are people out there who actually just dislike people based on their race, and we've got there's no excuse for that. Talking in this almost self-righteous way, like this, again, calibration. Knowing that Tucker's listeners are more aren't going to be quite as hardcore on race. And again, if he's Catholic, he doesn't, and he thinks that races exist, but that we're also a big human race, and that that we have commonalities too, and that our commonalities are ultimately more important than our differences. I completely agree on that point. But it's the way that he again responds in this what seems a pandering sort of way. So on the one hand, he's doing that. On the other hand, when people are actually sincerely giving him money and telling him, way to go, keep it up, or maybe asking him questions that aren't the most thrilling questions in the world, or the most interesting questions in the world, or making statements that are sort of like what you hear on the internet every day, and maybe not the most thought-provoking stuff, but he just mocks everybody, almost without exception. Everybody who sends him a super chat, he mocks them. He puts them down. This makes me think that he's not really serious. That this is, I hate to use the word grifter, because I hate most of the time people who use that word are just really annoying people, and they're usually wrong. They usually accuse somebody of being a grifter. That's just like the ready-made kind of insults. If you have an opinion that they don't like, they call you a grifter. It's just stupid. But in this case, I don't know. It makes me think that maybe he's so what I see is that Nick Fuentes is Richard Spencer, is going to ultimately be Richard Spencer 2.0. Even though he's made many more inroads to the mainstream, he's much more clever, and I think more interesting in his personality and demeanor and message, and more endearing. manages to be more endearing because, someone like Richard would never deign to say that he loves to eat Big Macs and stuff like that, uh, or stuff, things that seem more in line with the common man. But on the other hand, he's just mocking them and making fun of them, and again, it's funny, but it makes me think he's not really that serious, and it makes me suspicious of his true motives. So those are my thoughts about Nick Fuentes. Tell me what you think and thank you if you've watched this whole thing. God bless you.